future. But that's actually what, for this year, the capital improvement, that's the big one. And then there's kind of some miscellaneous valving and turnouts and just kind of general maintenance. The hot button issue is the stored water. So now jumping around, the stored water, or our we call it rollover water. It's basically state water that comes out of the delta and goes into the San Luis Reservoir. And the state issued the no pumping. And so everyone in this county was under the impression that from previous years, the rollover, that was still going to be available. So all the cities here have, in the Zone 3, have accounted for using their rollover amounts. And apparently that's not the case. And so that's where the county with Dean and Pavo, they've written a letter requesting from the state that they actually release our rollover amounts. So those are previous year's allocations that we didn't use. The no pumping is still in effect, and it turns out that the story that we're getting from the Department of Water Resources is, even though there's water in the San Luis Reservoir, they're not going to release that down, and so that's where the county's written a request. And I think some of the members of council here, you guys sit on that board, so I think you guys have seen that letter also. We can talk about that some more. And then heading down to the low-level release plan. Now this is for Lopez Lake. The way all the cities around here have agreed is we're going to use up our state water first, we're going to use our Lopez water second, and then our third is going to be pumping. It's going to be the wells. And so this low-level release plan is kind of interesting. This was developed after I believe it was 87 to 92, somewhere in there, that it was that drought. And during that drought, 1990 had the lowest rainfall, and then it carried over to 92. So at that time, Lopez Lake hit, it was somewhere around 17,000 acre feet. And so the county after that came together with a plan that they adopted, I think in 2006 or so, stating that, hey, if the reservoir ever gets to 20,000 acre feet, then we're going to do a low-level release plan. And a low-level release plan they haven't adopted yet. Right now, the Lopez is right around 27,000 acre feet. And when they've kind of done the projections on it, they're saying that using our same, if everyone's still drawing their full amount and they're still releasing for habitat and for the farmers the full amount, that there's about a 2-year buffer in Lopez, using it as is today. But if they were to go to this low-level release plan, then they'd start looking at water conservation a little bit harder. They'd start looking at the stream release down and saltwater intrusion, that sort of thing. So the county hasn't actually developed the low-level release plan. They'll probably be doing it. They're supposed to evaluate it every April 1st, and we're not going to have the 20,000 acre feet in it. So instead, they're going to kick it out probably to next year. So we can all look around and see that it's been really sunny and warm. We haven't really hit any rainfall, so we're not going to be, realistically, we're not going to really see any rain this year. So we'll be probably banking on next year to see what happens, and then after that, they'll probably be developing a low-level release plan. So this staff report kind of has a lot of things, because really before you tonight is just adopting the budget. But then we've tacked on some of these other discussion items that I think we should talk freely about, and hopefully I can answer some of them. If not, maybe someone else can chime in. I think this is great. I think we should probably be bringing this as an update probably more often to council, just to kind of just speak freely and update, and everyone should keep their finger on the pulse of what's going on. Another interesting thing was, I don't know if anyone saw in the San Jose newspaper, they broke down all kind of like regions throughout the state and what the average per capita use was. And the Central Coast was the lowest out of the whole state already. So I don't know if anyone saw that or not. And I mean, I didn't fact check any of that, but I just find it interesting, because if you start to come down with these stricter conservation methods, well, people in this region are already conserving quite a bit. Just something to think about.
Thank you for that. Now, I have it on good authority from John Lindsay. We're supposed to get a good storm later next week for multiple days. So
I'm waiting for that.
I'm holding him to that.
Yeah.
Were you finished?
No, I mean, I'm open for questions and discussions. I'm not usually the one who goes to these meetings, so I mean, I can do my best to answer whatever you have.
Great, thank you very much for your report. It's nice. It's a pleasure to have you here, Mayor Pro Tem Wagi.
Again, thank you for your report. A couple of comments or questions. So it appears that the stored state water is we have the rights to it, we just can't get it to us.
Correct. The stored state water, what the Department of Water Resources is saying is not in San Luis Reservoir. So the water that's in the San Luis Reservoir is not, for us. So the stored state water is still in the Delta, and the Delta, they're doing a no pumping, so we cannot get it at this time.
Okay.
And so we have signed on with a letter
Right.
requesting the 100% allocation, and then we also Pavo at the county, he then also broke down a 50-60% request.
But we're still getting our current state water.
Correct.
And I did notice, I've been keeping track of the Lake Oroville. I noticed they've been having quite a few rains up there, so it's turned the corner. It's actually filling up again, although it's still pretty low.
Okay.
So hopefully they get lots more storms too that are coming through, and hope that hopefully the situation will improve.
Sure, yeah. If you look at the historic data for Lopez Lake, usually the first 10 inches or so of rainfall that we get in the region doesn't necessarily raise the lake level all that much. I mean, it'll obviously raise, You'll get some runoff in the surface, but once you kind of clear that 10-inch mark, everything above that, you get exponential replenishment of the lake, just looking at all the historic data that they've had. So we obviously haven't hit the 10 inches for this rain season, so...
Yeah, I appreciate I think it's a good idea to keep us surprised. It's we need to keep abreast of it. Thank you.
Councilmember Woggy. Councilmember Curtis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
And it's only 6 o'clock.
So I don't recall this being discussed at the Zone 3 Water Advisory Board, the issue with stored state water, and I'm trying to understand what this language here states in the staff report and what you just conveyed. Is it really that it's basically kind of like paper water, that our allocation of state water, rather than coming from down the State Water Project from San Luis Reservoir being shipped to us, that we would just take that allocation from Lopez Reservoir?
Paper water, I think, is exactly the best description of it. So on paper, we say we have rollover or unused previous state water, not used from previous years. So we're asking for it now. Well, that water isn't in the San Luis Reservoir to give to us. So we're basically calling our credit due, but they're saying that the credit isn't in the San Luis Reservoir.
But there's water available within Lopez Reservoir to make up for that?
We have enough water, correct, yeah. The full allocation, I wouldn't say all the cities, but I know Pismo Beach, we're not using our full allocation, so we're rolling over the excess every year.
Excuse me, full allocation of what?
So we're entitled 800 acre feet out of Lopez, and I don't know the other numbers. We're not using that full amount of entitled water. So every year you're making a paycheck of $10, but you're only spending $8, so you're rolling your $2 into savings. So fast forward five years for your rainy day fund, where you're calling up your savings. Oops, your savings isn't available because it's not in the bank; it's in someone else's mattress.
So if our allocation of state water to Lopez Water is 800 acre feet,
correct,
and our allocation of state water is 1,198 acre feet, does that mean that if this were to go through, that let's say next year or the year after, we could actually request 2,000 acre feet from Lopez Reservoir?
Theoretically.
Okay.
But that goes into where we're setting up for the membrane filter. That you're still limited by the actual delivery system from Lopez. So if everyone's calling up that water all at once, the pipeline can't deliver it.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome. Councilmember Vargas. Councilmember Reese.
But you're calling me Councilmember Vargas.
Wait. Is this better?
That's so much better. I know, I got it. Thank you.
So my question would be, is when we get reports from you, what you're telling us this evening, are they reflected in the things that we're getting as of late? Or are we saying that we do have that stored water?
Oh, are you asking if you're getting a delayed report from me?
No. I'm saying that as we've gone along, we've talked about stored water and how much water we really have available to us. So what you're telling us this evening, is it reflective of what we've been told right along, or is there a change?
Currently this year we have enough water, and Lopez is still providing for everyone, and the state, even though they stopped pumping the Delta, we're still pulling out of San Luis Reservoir, but our paper balance, we won't be getting the allocations for the coming years. So next year, if it doesn't rain, we've lowered Lopez Lake, and the state won't be releasing the water because they're not replenishing the San Luis Reservoir. So I guess I'm still a little confused with your question.
As we've gone along and talked about our water,
Uh-huh.
what we have available to us, I think that we've counted what is stored, and what I'm hearing tonight is that that stored water is really not available to us, and that's what I'm asking.
Correct. The stored state water for next year will not be available, but we've requested it, so we'll see what happens.
Mr. Lewis?
Yeah, I appreciate the perspective you're offering. I've talked to Mr. Ogren, the Public Works Director for the county. We have requested this, and while Mr. Eldridge is correct, we're not just resigning to that. This is a big issue, and this was part of the board's action in declaring the drought emergency and declaring health and human safety issues. This rule that's different comes from the governor's declaration of drought. So when the governor made that executive order, that's where there's the pumping issues. You can't pump from the Delta to fill back San Luis Reservoir. But we have some critical issues in the county, greater than just here in Pismo Beach, that they're really pushing for. And we continue, the city managers are involved, and we'll be calling on some of you to be involved to continue to push DWR to get this water. And that's where Pavo's had correspondence, and will continue. The fact that they're just saying you can't have your stored water, period, that doesn't sit well. They're going to have to distribute some of that at some point. And it's a fluid situation, but I think it is, in the sense that they're going to have to do something. And so I just wanted the council to understand that we are pushing this. Pavo is pushing this. The board
And I understand that, but when we talk about development and water usage, we had this in mind when we talked about that, or did we, at that point in time, feel as though we literally had that stored water?
When we showed you, the last time we really talked about this in depth, which I think you're recalling, is we looked at the sale of some of this water. And we showed you some different scenarios. And so we did show this as an option that we could count on in the next 2 to 3 years and pull down. We did show you that. Mr. Fine is currently working through different options if the worst case scenario comes and they can't deliver this. But I'm still optimistic that we will be able to get 50% delivery or something of this stored water for us. We still do have other portfolio options to answer your questions, and Mr. Fine's working through those.
Councilmember Howell.
Thank you, Mayor. In retrospect, maybe we should have sold all of it. So are they really saying none of the water is going to come down from above the Delta to the county, period?
So,
Well, I know it's not coming from the Delta, but they're not going to release anything from the San Luis Reservoir for the county.
what I think Mr. Eldridge has been correct. What's in the San Luis Reservoir is for current use under the current distribution. We're still receiving state water. We're the new state water year, and the 0% has not started yet. So we're still receiving water, and that's what San Luis Reservoir is supporting. What they're saying is over and above that, there isn't enough water in the reservoir to meet the demands of people calling in their credits. They're stored state water. And under the governor's declaration, they aren't authorized to pump and move water from the Delta to the reservoir, in which then we can get it from there. And so that's where we're in this quagmire. However, there is in the governor's declaration, as I understand from talking to Mr. Ogren, if you have health and human safety issues, and your county board declares that there's actually a threat to human life and safety, then water potentially can be moved. And I think that's what he's trying to do. There's real issues in other communities in this county that are threats to human health. And so if they start moving water, we're going to tag right onto that. We're not in that situation, thank goodness. We have a more robust portfolio here today still. But that's what we're in weekly communication with Public Works at the county, as they're trying to get that water. So to say they're absolutely not going to move the water, we haven't dealt with the governor's drought declaration. And there's a lot of things we're all trying to work through and understand what this means. This declaration had several points. So I'm cautiously optimistic that Mr. Ogren will be successful in getting something delivered to the county while we're able to do that, and some of that we hope will be our water. But but I think as Mr. Eldridge has said, from a truth perspective as of today, they're saying they're not moving water here. We're still working through that. Does that answer your question?
It does. I don't think they are going to move it down to the reservoir from above the delta. But I was wondering how much water is in the reservoir, and if any of it was going to come down to the county.
Not stored water right now, just current water.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Eldridge, the 13% of the expenses that Pismo is responsible for, how is that contribution established? Is it population?